Okay, so what do we got here? We got a lieutenant. Okay, so we got a lieutenant. I can't really tell from here, but let's go on, because this is going to be critically important. I got to watch some of it.
When you become a leader,
remember, math is a fist fight.
To start deciding what's most important and what's
Math's a fist fight when we get into command leads, commanders, specifically the difference between team leads. What's important for you guys to realize, what's important for you guys to realize is we work in a packet. This is how photons work. This is how elements work. If we just do an individual collision on a situation, one of you versus the wall, it doesn't really determine what physics is. No matter how we design that simulator. What does work is the natural ground in a situation of an environment that naturally works. So whether it's my town, your town, or some other town, there are going to be some things that naturally work. People come in, they work, they build equities, and they continue off on. You wake up, you get dressed, you go out to catch the train, you catch the train to earn a living, you earn a living to do what?
First thing we're going to do.
Live life, right? You're going to be inside here and say, that's been you. You've been the calculus standard to determine what works and what doesn't work in irrational situations, to determine trajectories of those situations. As individuals, you are all leaders of that action, regardless of your troop lead, regardless of the commander, regardless of the commander-in-chief. I want you guys to think about that.
I want to go back to priority. Notice,
inside of here,
people say all the time, well, that's my priority. Oh, that's my priority. I can always
as you determine whether to make a choice to accept whether somebody says something to you, whether you allow them to make determinations for you, you have to gauge the trust factor on that. That without being in that region for land nav, it's not your backyard, it's not your town, but in the same way, the azimuth works the way to what you are going to agree with what that situation to be. We're going to have to begin to make rational decisions on this situation. Again, math is a fist fight. From command leads, it's our idea to say, we don't really need to do anything. Command leads. All we have to do is take the standard model of what combatives are and actively go through this in any one form to make sure that it is at least up to date. Have you ever tried to teach calculus? I bet you it has a lot of commonalities with combatives. Repelling,
that we're spending a lot of time
airborne,
and money on you, because that's how important that you are.
This is true. That is a very true statement. Now, what you put your time on and what you spend your money on. Now, I've been a stonemason for a long time. I would often go through in a company where they wouldn't provide you with the correct tools. It's more efficient for me to buy my own gloves. Now, it's not that they didn't provide gloves, but did they ever calc them? Did they ever test gloves on a person to really make sure it was the best determination if it was the right equipment for them, for the station, for the sit-up? Or is it just generally, all right, here's your pair of frost grips, the cheapest buyer or the cheapest bidder put onto it, and then you're in the service in the middle of the day with gloves that fall apart. With the situation under your standard where now I have to leave the detail and go find new gloves because my gloves are all torn up. Now, how many situations in calculus can you compare that to? Have you guys taken the personal responsibility in these concepts to make sure that your own station had your own safety analysis, your own equipment analysis, your own performance ratings under your own standard? You letting somebody else do it for you?
Does leader ever come back?
My job is not to be nice here. My job is to stop harassment from happening to you. Problems and events that could commonly happen in terms of what interactions are. Collisions.
After that, it becomes
combatives. But it has nothing to do with wrestling. It has nothing to do with a fight. Will have everything to do with what's going on those standard models and whether they truly reflect the trajectory of what is supposed to happen. What about the T1? You guys know where you're going to be tomorrow? What if I told you that inventory standard at these command leads are exactly the same? What's the difference between you and you? The training, experience, overtime? Is that worth the thing to you? Potentially. It may be the one that's necessary. It also may not be. Now, I'm not making a determination from your good lieutenant here. That was up for you guys to determine, not for me to determine to you whether these words are correct or not as a Sharps officer.
Can he
But be
physically
sure,
be at every point of action?
if calculus is
No.
the same,
Me.
regardless of where
Can I
you are,
physically be at every
whether we're
point
going
of
to take a
action?
mission onto a battlefield,
Impossible.
a drug
Too big of an
entity,
organization, too spread
a
out.
rape
In the
ring,
brigade, right?
a
Because so then we have
unit
this idea
of
leadership and
whatever
commanding.
system up to date, which
And
would
this
be
is where I wanna
relative on
try to
today,
kinda
some
talk you through
detachment,
here.
some
So
unit, some
here's kind of what
paramilitary
over
militia
there.
that pops up
Notice
that the
what this
local
represents
forces can't
is
put
this,
down.
You have the point
We're just
of
there to
action,
readjust
right?
it.
Let me give an example.
Should we?
Wrestling example.
Should we?
So two wrestlers are in the arena. They're sort of wrestling. Okay. So
What's a great reason for it? Well, how about the destabilization of that government? Obviously, if they keep having problems like that calculus, why not let it destabilize? It's a trick question.
Coach, should I go for a Russian
It has multiple
single
answers.
on that left leg?
There might be a time for that. There might be a space for
yeah,
that.
go ahead.
That might be within the operational
Turn around.
standards of past
happened?
missions where we allowed a circumstance to have happen. That's that
Probably on my
Russian
back, yeah.
leg sweep.
Is there any
Do you look back at the commander and make
doubt
sure that that was what you should have done?
that the circumstance where that left leg presented itself and I was ready to throw my shot, at the time I turned and said, Coach, what do you think?
If the
We should
law
do
is
this?
behind you for Americans,
What happened?
it'll be what was correct.
The situation
Not because
changed.
there was
It's very
that
different,
leg
right?
opportunity to
Probably.
be there.
Jumped
Shit,
on
I'll
me.
take out a little lady on the
Is
street.
that left leg presenting itself in the same opportunity?
There she is. She's got a wallet. She's got a leg
No
down.
chance, right? But let's say I go for it anyway. I'm like, well, you said, and I do it.
If the situation doesn't
what's
present itself to
probably
be
gonna
those
happen?
ideas and the American standards of, well, do I think that
Is there
that's
any
going to
chance
go
I would've
well
been
with my
shot?
platoon? Do I think that's going to go
The
well
circumstance-
with
what
the
I did
American
was
populace
wholly
as a whole? Do I
inappropriate
think that's
at
going to
that
be
second.
something that
For
I
one
want to
moment, it
reflect
was
that
very
any
appropriate.
soldier on this planet, Chinese,
But by the time
Russian,
it took
Yemen,
me
Haiti, or
to turn
otherwise,
and
would
say,
do in
should I
this
do this,
circumstance
and the
when the
time went
calculus
from
of the
the coach
situation
to
puts an
go,
E over your head and
maybe
you
the
guys
coach
act
on
as
the map.
electrons?
In that time,
As you guys act like
the situation
particles.
changed. What if
As
my
you
coach
guys
is not on
act
the map
like
then?
elements. As you guys
what if
act
the coach
like
is in the stand?
compounds.
What if the coach
Because this could be the compound that
is
shows
back in
everybody
his
what
house?
college is.
And I'm
Just
trying to
you
send
and the
text
teaching.
message. It's like, I have
The
to relay
difference
to
here
somebody, send
is a
them text message.
calculus
Should I take
teacher
that left leg
teaching
shot?
calculus students to
And what
become
if the
calculus
coach is,
teachers.
doing something
A
else,
war
he's out of
soldier
stall, and he doesn't
teaching
get that
them
text
how to
message
be
for a long time.
effective
You see
war
the problem with
soldiers
time?
when this person is no longer around.
Minutes could go by.
The conversation isn't
And I'm still
that
waiting.
difficult.
Should I
You
take
do
the
not
shot?
need to know
I
the
don't know what to do.
military Joint Chief of Staff dictionary of terms word for word. You do not need to know the
Therefore, who
calligraphy
is
of
the most
word for
aware
word Sun
and
Tzu
who is the
so
most
you can
important
transmit it in
person
a
to make the
cipher
decision what is the right
system
thing to do?
paralleled into this system that isn't just a
The
message,
person on the map
be steady like
right
the mountain,
here, at the point of action.
crash like thunder.
The point of
You know, what if I
action
gave you
is
that in
the
a code,
optimal
but
place
actually the
to
code
make the right
differential
decision of what
totally
needs to
spelled out a
occur.
different message
Because
that
things
says, in that
change
operation, E4 to a location on a grid section.
Do we do that? Are you allowed to make decisions on the right there?
Reality isn't what you guys necessarily think
Really?
it is. It is what it is in front of you. Now, the trajectory on this says it's always going to be
How many
calculus,
decisions you're allowed to make
but we
such-
never know which direction these things are going. We're
Really?
going to need your
I'm
vector
asking.
positions. That last
Because
point
why?
of
Why
contact
don't-
where you can truly
why don't we let you
determine
do
what
that more
those
often?
things are
What are we worried about?
blindfolded. Shouldn't need to ask you. You're going to come
Making
up to the
wrong choice.
commander
You're
without
doing the
my
wrong thing
opinion of what
because
went wrong.
Here's the thing.
That's heat.
When you're on
That's
the
a
map,
failing in the
though,
machine. It's a
You
squeaky.
ever heard of tunnel vision? Anybody
And
heard
I
of
know
that?
you guys are
Sure.
programmed with infrared.
When you're in the arena,
I know you're
the
programmed
world
with that
becomes like
X-ray
this.
to tell me where the bones are, yeah?
This is how you're
There's
seeing the
birth.
world. Right? As a team leader, you are making decisions based thinking like a
As a
team
team leader, I
What
want
is
you
right
to
for
have
my
a
team?
complete brief
Only.
on every single one of your
Well, what's
men.
the
They're
problem
going to
with
hate
that?
it. You have to convince them why they love it. You have to convince them why, in your opinion,
you're
regardless
doing
of it being this lieutenant or
wholly
this other team lead in
inappropriate
front of
for
you
the
or that
good of the
private down on the
organization.
ground, why it
makes
couldn't
sense
be
to you?
anything else by knowing them so well,
Right, yeah, well,
by
if I do
knowing
that,
yourself
doesn't
that
mean
well.
That's the right thing to do, sir. Taking care of my soldiers.
Without that number, this company command, when you ask
But
them to
your
do the
action
calculus for
could
you of what
completely
distance, what security
lose
defense
the
stock
battle,
you guys are
lose
going to
the
be,
and all
why
that
as a
and all.
unit or individual your units
So
as
therefore,
this
what
group
commander
comes
wanna
to
do then?
this as a singular point at that point of contact
What do we want to do?
should be the one we choose.
It's risky. You're too risky.
No, there's always going to be human infallibility
So
in
therefore,
here.
we don't want to allow you to make decisions.
But that's the
So
mix.
that means
No matter
I'll
what
make the
unit you
decision
get in, there's going to be a
here.
combination, not just
Right,
of the
because
logistics guy,
I
not just of the
don't
language guy, not just of
trust
those
you.
things. And be sure you have that in your units as a
So
team lead.
therefore, you see the outcome though.
Wow, that's a hell of a
There's
spot,
one of my
right
most
to be a
favorite
company
pictures.
commander.
Um,
Right to be a
shows-
battalion
it was
commander.
a lecture,
Right
and
up
I
to be
showed
the
why French
commander-in-chief.
lost World War II. And he had two pictures shown. It was really cool. I
Young
remember.
ladies and
And it
gentlemen
showed
inside
the
here, I
French
want you to start
general,
taking this seriously.
right? And he's standing
The upper
around
limit
the
is where
table,
you leave it,
and he has a map
not where
here,
somebody
and
leaves
he's
it for
around
you.
and there's all these staff officers
Just because
right
they
there.
didn't have that
Picture, see it?
information doesn't mean you can't run
The next
these
picture
standard
shows up
models on
there's
your sector,
Rommel,
run
the
these
German general,
aspects in
and he's
anything
really
that you
dusty,
do.
and
What
he's
is
got
land nav?
goggles up here, and his face is full of dust, and he has
What is
binoculars right
PT?
here.
Are they both calculus standards?
Now,
Are there a different form
the
for the way
difference
you're actually
between
coming
these two
across the
pictures?
rope over the water? Or how you would gauge that from the
Where
ground?
was Rommel making
Oh, of
decisions?
course you're going to use your numbers. You have to.
Yeah, he was seeing
Otherwise, I'm
them
going to have
in the
to use you
binos.
to cross that
Looking.
wire, Feynman.
But the French general, where was he making decisions?
I need you to know which of your ants is the best of
He had
them.
to say, oh, we
Which
should
one of your
go
soldiers?
left.
What's
Tell
the
them to
difference?
go left.
An ant in a
And on
mission
and on
has a
and on.
hive
That
mind
time
by what
factor,
that
and
standard
by the
is.
time they went left,
1
it was
plus
totally
1 equals
appropriate.
this,
Where Rommel was
Lucy.
actually there.
And never has it ever been anything less than zeros and one bits and bytes of this cell
See that?
into this next operation, or a
So
detachment
what
of this
I'm
thing
talking
talking
about,
about a
in order to be a
spectrum of
leader, for this to
operations
work,
that somebody is best
You have
resonated to
understand
turn into that function.
decisions
Make
need
sure
to
you're
be
not
made to be
overmassed.
optimal, to be effective, for us to be
Make
able to
sure
find
that
outcomes
inside
and
of your
win.
teams,
They have to be made
whether
at
it's
the
just
point
the
of
stone
action.
mill down the road, or your barracks, or your NCOs, or whatever the case may be,
have
because
to
that
be
doesn't
able
matter
to
at this
see
point.
the
I'm in
bigger
your head. I want you to think about those numbers. I want you to have a name for all those things.
So how
Which
do you
one of
manage
them
that?
is your
How do you
calculus
manage
guy?
it?
Who's your linguistic?
Bingo. That is what Commander's Intent is all about.
Now, it takes a little bit of
Notice
lead
the
over
word
here.
intent.
And I'll believe me,
What I
Sharps will have
intend
my ass later
to do.
for
Why is
being
that
on you
word
guys a little
intent?
hard for it, but I'd rather be
Say,
hard
this is
for
what
you.
you're
Show you the
gonna do.
failing in this that you
Yeah,
guys
Sergeant.
now have to learn. Do you think it'll be any easier later?
Please
Work
tell me.
on it. This is a constant problem, no matter what regiment, what rank, what country, what system, as a soldier, will be a world universal problem. And it's the problem we go toe-to-toe with other countries for. It's the reason we show up at the games every day. It's the reason we clock into it. We love it. It's the same thing down there in the stone mill. It's a constant meat grinder of being made out of the right metal that passes through.
At the point of action. So I'm
Now,
gonna give
for
you
most of you
intent,
guys, you're already there.
right? And
But look
intent
around.
has three-
As company
three
commanders or leaders inside of here, there's only going to be one spot in this unit, and we're waiting for this guy to die. I want you to know it. I want you to look it right down the barrel. So this guy has to earn your respect more than anything in the world. So I hope he does that today.
Do you all agree with that? Nothing's worse than not
I
knowing
hope
why
the
you're doing something,
calculus
right?
inside here
my
teaches
job
you
is to
something,
give
whether
you
it's
why are you
elements
doing
or
this?
elements,
Purpose.
what the difference would be.
Then I tell you, hey,
Now,
I
mathematically,
think
they
there's
are
some
identical.
conditions that have to happen in order
But
to
your
work on
unit might have a
You
specialty
have
in
to get to
something.
the
Your
rest of
element
that.
might
I
have a
gotta make
specialty
sure
in
you
something.
make
Your
things. I
element
gotta
might
make
have a
sure
specialty
that,
in
you know,
something.
you
Be
have
sure to be
everything. I
balanced.
gotta make sure
But
that
you don't want to
carry
be
out
so
all
balanced
we call
inside here that they
task,
could
and
just
that's
have
what we
any
call
unit.
And then the end,
You know how
in the
hard
end,
it
this
is to
what
raise
it
all
means.
levels in the
In
bar
end,
graph all
after
equally at the
said,
same
you have to
time?
have Hill 1,
What are you
2,
doing to
3.
prioritize these tasks?
Whose job
You
is
know,
it to
what do I
decide
have as
how
phalanx
that
inside
occurs?
here that might correlate to a high probability of the
Whose job is
reason I chose a training course today?
Yours.
We can make it
You're
anything.
the one in the arena.
We can
You're
make
there.
land nav calculus.
You're the
We
one
can
that
make
decides
land
how
nav
that comes
organic
about.
chemistry. We could make land nav or PT
And that's
any
what
variable
intent
of
is always
economics.
going to be. But you, in order to have the context,
But why would I put that
and
time in
get
there for
out
you
of the
guys?
world of seeing it like this,
If you're not going to do
in
that for
order
me. If
for
I
this
got to
to
do
work,
all that work
you have
myself,
to think
why would I do it
two
for you?
levels
Why not
up.
just lead your units? Why not just
Two
do
levels
the
up, minimum.
social media mission
Team
command
leaders
instead of
can't think like
utilizing you
team
guys the way it is?
You have to
That's
start
right,
thinking
because it's a
like
trick
platoon
question.
leader.
It'd fall apart.
You have to see the world through
You're going to
their
have to be
eyes.
satisfied with where you are, what you're doing, your house, your
Well, you
wife, your
have to
lady.
see the
Those are other
world
things that
to
you have to
become
think
the
about
commander.
inside of here.
This can only
Because it's going to be
happen
in your
if
head
you
while
do
you're
it that
training
way.
Murphys.
Platoon leaders, you have to see the world the way I
That's
see
what they
it.
are. It's a term that I
have to be
describe
able to
for
see
it,
the
Sharps.
world
Calm
the
their
division
ass down.
commander sees it. General Dent, I
Over the
have to see
differential,
world through
DL
his
over
eyes.
DT, I'd pick one of you guys
If
every
you're
single
able
time.
to do that, then
You know, if I had the choice of a
we will be
non-trained
able
subject,
to
civilian,
make
or a trained team
decisions
lead,
at the
where do you
point
think
of
I'm going to go?
action that is entirely
But this is the roster.
appropriate
Make sure you know your enemy.
to make the bigger
Battle
picture
buddy?
occur.
We do this in simulator theory for a
Now,
reason.
In the American Army,
We
who
do
here
this
has
so we
ever
just
done
don't
an
tee
operation?
off with each other and
Who's
bang
ever
it
won
out
a
for the
deliberate
top
operation?
lead, because at the end of it won't mean shit
ever
all but a
won
fist fight.
one?
As far as your units and
Listen
what's
to me.
inside of here, it's just going to damage it and
Tell me
make
if
it
I'm
all
wrong,
fucked up,
that
so it's
most
no
of the
good for
time,
anybody. Let
that
alone the
person
punishments
giving
and
the
standards and
upward
those things.
most concerned with making sure they check the block of getting everything in there.
You know, how many of you actually have a standard model to work with? Or is it something this guy handed to you? There's nothing wrong with it. The same way I learned calculus is the same way I changed calculus. I made it manipulate to under my will of what it represented, and then those would be the forms that we taught. Are you guys go ahead and doing that?
Let me say that again. We entirely focus on
You're dismissed.
perfection in method